seem quite dangerous to me. I'm outing myself now, as I did on several occasions, as a great fan of the ideas of the late 18th century. But be that as it may, our democracy, with all its deficiencies it has, functions in a way that all interests, whatever they are, they may be the interests of banks, of rating agencies, of, I don't know, there are other people who are in responsible positions, say biologists who may make decisions on the allowance or non-allowance of genetically modified organisms or things like that. Everybody is going into parliament, is participating in the political process on whatever level he or she is, with interests. Why shouldn't lawyers? It reminds me a little bit in the late 1960s, early 1970s, we had a discussion in Germany whether soldiers might participate in the political process or not. It was a discussion that was, well, it was very uploaded with traditional ideas about the army, about militarism, the special form the Prussian army or the imperial and later Nazi army had. But finally they came to the conclusion, yes, of course, soldiers should participate in the political process, and by that be treated as normal citizens, which would be good for society, which in fact, now it's 40 years ago, it was good for the army, that is proven now. And I don't see the clue why especially lawyers should be subjected to a special code of conduct. And I don't not only see the clue, but I fear by doing so you would stand our parliamentary democracy from its feet to its head in an anti-Hegelian or Marxist way. Thank you.
Ačiū už klausimą. Aš šiaip nemanau, kad kada nors bus formalizuota tai, ką aš sakiau. Čia tiesiog toks daugiau teorinis pamastymas, o šiaip nežinau, ar jūs esate girdėję, mes čia turėjom tokią garsėją bylą dėl vaiko globos, aš turiu omenyje Venckienės Stankūnaitės ginčą. Ir va tame ginče labai aktyviai sudalyvavo politikai. Ir ten buvo tiek pasakyta teisinės neteisybės ir tiek buvo dezinformuota visuomenė, kad tai buvo viena iš priežasčių pradėti galvoti apie tai, kad galbūt reikėtų nustatyti tam tikrus etikos standartus, kad politikai turėdami teisinių žinių ir suprasdami, kad jie meluoja, jie iš tikrųjų meluoja, jie matydami, kad yra balta, sako, kad yra juoda, tam, kad jie susirinktų savo politinius dividendus. Dėl to ir buvo sumanyta, kad galbūt jiem, kažkokie etikos standartai galiotų. Nes taip, bet, dėl to buvo suskaldyta visuomenė. Žmonės, ta prasme, Lietuvoje žmonės apskritai yra gana žemo tiek politinio sąmoningumo, tiek teisinio sąmoningumo, nors jie galvoja priešingai. Aš net nežinau, ir paskui iš to išplaukia, kad jie priima klaidingus sprendimus. Dabar yra rinkimai. Iš tos visos istorijos išsirutuliojo tai, kad atsirado partija, kuri neturi absoliučiai jokios politinės ideologijos, visiškai jokios. Jų šūkis yra sutvarkykime teisėsaugą arba, nežinau, įvykdykime teisingumą. Ir ta partija eina į Seimą ir gali būti, kad jinai netgi pateks į Seimą, tarkim, peržengs tų 5 procentų barjerą. Aš nekalbu apie tos partijos kandidatų sąrašą. Ta prasme, man neetiška būtų kalbėti, bet geriau jinai nepatektų į Seimą. Tai Tai yra, ta prasme, tai yra sisteminis reiškinys, reikia žinoti Lietuvos kontekstą, kad būtų galima suprasti, bet aš manau, kad Lietuvoje to reikėtų. Mes ne Vokietija, mes neturime tokių tradicijų, neturime tokios teisinės sistemos puikios ir kitų dalykų.
Okay, just final questions and comments. So, Philip, if I follow, Eran wanted to pose a question and Julia wanted to pose a question. So okay. Those will be final. Philip,
okay.
Please.
In this discussion, because it becomes a discussion and which I like very much, but as I understand this, you have objections against a politician who bases their political activities on private experiences. So you perceive some kind of transgression of a border between private and public action. No?
Ne, aš nieko prieš. Tegul tie politikai gali savo įvaizdį...
I'm just trying to understand.
Gali kurti savo įvaizdį tiek savo asmeninę, tiek kitų žmonių asmeninę patirtimi, bet tiesiog tegul jie jos neiškraipo. Nes dabar yra taip, kad jie ją iškraipo. Ir, tarkim, pateikia arba dalį tiesos, arba pateikia, ta prasme, tiesą tokiam kontekste, kad yra iškraipoma tikrovė. Ir tas auditorija gauna netikrą žinią, gauna iškraipytą žinią. Tai man visiškai nesvarbu, kuo jie remia, ta prasme, kuo jie grindžia savo įvaizdį ir panašiai, bet laitai nebūna iškraipyta informacija, juolab laitai nebūna iškraipyta teisinė informacija, nes paskui žmonės būna netgi taip, kad žmonės tuo įtiki ir bando ginti savo teises. Jie sako, kad jisai sakė taip ir taip, kad aš galiu ginti savo teises tokiu ir tokiu būdu, ir jie eina į teismą ir sako, aš teisus, o teisme jam sako, ne, tu neteisus, ir tada pasidaro, kad teismai blogi, bloga teisinė sistema, bloga Lietuva neteisinė valstybė ir taip toliau ir panašiai. Ta prasme, tai yra yra tarp visko ryšys.
Just briefly.
Yeah, but okay, I can understand that you do not like the position this person takes, and I can imagine that you do not like the distortion of the way the general public has been informed. And but on the other hand, why don't you trust the political process? Because the political process is based on intersubjectivity and on exchange of opinions. And so, if this is done in an open way, people will eventually see that they have been fooled or misled or whatever. And if it eventually, part of the political process is that everybody can participate and say, okay, do not support this person because what she represents and what she presents as a reality is not true. And that's all about politics. Politics is about that.
Norėčiau dar kartą pakartoti, Lietuvoje politinis ir teisinis sąmoningumas yra labai žemas, nors patys lietuviai galvoja priešingai. Taip, kad tas nuskaidrėjimo, nušviesėjimo rezultatas gali įvykti labai labai vėlai. Tai, nežinau, aš kažkaip norėčiau, kad žmonės to skausmingai nesulauktų. Geriau to išvengti anksčiau, bet galima dėl to ginčytis.
Okay, just now I want...
We call it democracy. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I know about it.
Okay.
Now the question from Professor Eran Lepp.
Okay, I would like to refer to Marco's intriguing presentation. I find it very difficult to accept the divorce that you are proposing between ethics from one hand and law from the other hand. It may help to create a kind of a class of legal technicians. And, it was, the European experience, I think, that Professor Parf has spoke about in the 20th century. The South African experience showed that it is very dangerous to create a legal system that excludes Jews or gays or or black people is a system that should not be respected.
Yes.
It's a good answer, by the way.
You created
It's a bloody difficult
created
question.
that problem.
What the hell I'm going to say? I think a lawyer as an institutional person, because lawyers, my conception of lawyers here, that is institutional person, he has certain rights and duties when he's functioning in the legal system. And I'm just trying to say what the duties of a lawyer are in the legal system, so that he must think systematic way, and that way also to present, when he's as an advocate in the court or a judge in the decision, present what kind of principles he and what kind of tradition he is for. And now, in fact, what I'm doing here is that I'm also saying that way that they are presenting their own systematic way, how they think, what kind of principles they think for this legal system has, they put them under the scrutiny of the general public. I'm talking about democratic control of the courts. You know, maybe I'm talking too much in the context of functioning democratic system, that there is a control also of courts. But you know, I see that as a lawyer's ethics, because I see lots of problems of lawyers. I think when they take certain rights or certain duties in a very, very formal way, that they only think of that and not the legal system as a whole, then they have a problem, exactly that problem that you know, they give rights to some people and not to the others. I mean, they don't consider the legal system as a whole. I see the legal systematization as the basic idea of legal ethics, and that is communicated to the general public in open way by the court, by the judges, by the advocates, and so on. Then it may become, but that the courts are seen as ethical actors which try to introduce to the general public something else, something ethics which is beyond what is in the law, and confusing morality with their systematic approach to law. I think it's a problem. I think the problem exactly lies regarding your that people are treated in different way and so on. We agree about that, but we don't naturally seem to agree about how is it achieved. So I'm trying to propagate this positivistic, ethical, legal ethical idea, and as we see, when we confuse the institutional status of a lawyer with the political status of a lawyer, we immediately start to see problems. That you know, then the democratic system doesn't function at all, because we put restrictions to politicians which, you know, are somewhere in the legal system. So make a separation of this, I think, is very ethical in a way, and it's also very democratic. This is my point.
Can I react?
Okay. Just
because
Somebody should turn out this mic.
yeah. Okay, thank you. So I understand from your reaction that the opportunists Roman Pouf was referring to, that they were not doing their duty according to you, but what you say is that the democratic system was distorted, and therefore they may have made different choices. But then I want to discuss or present much more ordinary legal life situation. You know that in the development of administrative law in France, and you don't know, but in the Netherlands in a similar fashion, that at a certain point the French Council of State but also the Dutch Court of Cassation used principles of proper administration to interpret civil law obligations, but also the French Council of State used also a principle of appropriate administration, for example, abuse of power, the prohibition of abuse of power, or what can be called carefulness. To apply, to interpret certain vague legal norms and financial responsibility, for example, as a legal term. And by doing that, they drew ethical principles through a kind of membrane, and because they are judges, the ethical principles were transformed into law. So, does that fit your... And on the other hand, if you look at the functioning of ombudsmen, and for example the English parliamentary ombudsman or the English local government ombudsman, they have this set of rules which they like getting it right. And they refer to principles of natural justice in the English legal system, which are applied by them as ethical principles, and which remain ethical principles because they have no legal power, so they can give an advice to an administrative body because of a complaint on how to improve their behavior, how to compensate the complaint, but they have no way to enforce it. Still, the English judges also use these principles of natural justice to apply the law. So somehow there's an existing relationship between those principles as ethics, and an actual relationship between these principles as ethics and between those principles as law. So for that reason, your presentation of, let's say, the postponement of ethics by lawyers confuses me.
I understand, yeah. There is a phenomenon when principles become rules. Then you can read from the principles, you can read rights and obligations. And it's not a new phenomenon. I mean, it exists, yeah. It happens in many courts. European Court of Justice has turned principles which states never agreed that individuals should have rights. They have turned into clear, precise and unconditional rights for individuals to do something. So, you know, this phenomenon exists. But you know, I see only rules as a source of rights and duties. I don't see principles as a source of rights and duties, unfortunately. And I think every decision where the court relates two rules each other and two rights each other, it constitutes a principle, but it doesn't follow from natural law principles or anything that there is this right. You see, it's not a causal operation, but it's every time the court makes a decision, it may or may not constitute a principle. Sometimes it expresses it like that.
Yeah, but it's a creative act by the courts.
Well, but then it's under the scrutiny of the democratic society whether they accept that this principle is there. It is the academia which reads these principles. Many times courts don't put up these principles. They don't say, they just apply the rules. But many times, especially the Anglo-Saxons, they read from the decisions of the court principles which courts never explained. So, you see, it's constituted in every decision when the relativization principle is applied, two rights against each other. There's something constituted which is the systematic, coherent legal system. But it doesn't follow, because natural law is not, well, this is too much to say, but I say it. Natural law is not a coherent system of legal rules or rights. I agree. This is my point.
Okay, so I think we can continue this genuine discussion later, and actually I have to now in some sense, finish the conference. So I wanted really to say a simple thank you to all the participants of the conference. It was really fantastic to have you all here. As young people sometimes say about very real things that they are unreal. So it was in some sense unreal. So I think that we created today really constructive, discussive and liberal atmosphere. And I hope we will continue in the future and will be good lawyers and good people.